येन देखा, यूरोप का यूरो देखा, अमरीकी डॉलर देखा, फिर भी दिल को भाया इंडियन रुपया। I love रुपया 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 रुपया। I love रुपया 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 रुपया।
Hi, I am Neel and she is Riya. We have come from America. I want to open a bank account. What is the procedure?
Hi sir. Hello madam. Well, what kind of account do you wish to open? NRO, NRE or FCNR?
Oh, what are all these options and what kind of account should we open?
Even I am confused. What is the difference between all these accounts?
Wait a minute. I already have a regular bank account in India. My father opened it in my name years ago before I became an NRI.
But can an NRI have an ordinary account in India?
I don't know, but don't worry, Neel. With Charmi's help, we can again meet our NRI Counsel, Mr. Mukesh Patel, and get his guidance about all these banking queries.
Welcome again, Neel and Riya. No worries, it is but natural for any NRI to have this question. And Mukesh sir, can you please resolve their queries related to their bank accounts? So now talking about Riya, can she continue her ordinary savings account?
Surely. Charmi, we need to keep in mind that when it comes to the non-resident banking accounts, the regulations in these regard are governed by the provisions of the Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA. Unfortunately, a very large number of NRIs, just like we were talking in the case of Riya, are not aware that once a resident becomes a non-resident, he or she is required to convert his ordinary savings account into a non-resident ordinary account. You know, you normally become a non-resident once you start living overseas with the intention of either working or settling there, as we referred to in our very first episode. The general test is around 6 months in a financial year. If you have stayed outside, you are treated as a non-resident. So just as in the case of what Riya needs to do is to go to the bank and tell them that she is a non-resident and her ordinary savings account should be transferred or redesignated. You know, the account will remain the same, but it just gets redesignated as a NRO or a non-resident ordinary account. You need to keep in mind that though the RBI is not very vigorous into this in involving the penal actions, but technically if you are a non-resident and you have continued to maintain your ordinary savings account and not convert it into NRO, it is a technical default. So let us hope that all NRIs, you know, just like Riya, they convert in time their accounts. And Charmi, it is very important that they do so.
Okay.
You know, you may ask, well, if I have not changed it, what do I lose? You know, you will continue to be able to operate it. You will also get interest apart from the fact that it's a technical default. But the major handicap that you would have is when you want to repatriate anything out of that account overseas, you know, you have funds in that account which you want to send in foreign currency abroad, you will not be able to do it until it is an NRO account.
Okay.
So an NRO account designation is a must for purposes of repatriation. Even in case where you want to receive funds from overseas in foreign currency, it is but logical that you should have a NRO account, because that would be the correct designated account to receive the remittance in foreign currency.
Okay. Well, I'm sure with this advice, Riya and many other NRIs will switch their ordinary accounts to an NRO. But now coming to Neel, what kind of account does he need to open and how?
Chami, now let's take the case of Neel. Neel is a typical case where an NRI is wanting to open a bank account in India for the first time. In fact, even apart from redesignating your old ordinary savings account into NRO, you can always open a new NRO account also in case you are a non-resident. Now you go to any bank, you have to give your credentials and documents to the effect that you are a non-resident, and once you do that, then you are eligible to open, if you are depositing something simply in Indian rupees, what we call as the non-resident ordinary or NRO account. But then there is also this term NRE account, and many NRIs get confused between NRO and NRE. NRE is non-resident external account.
Okay.
And Chami, what is the difference between NRO and NRE? Let's first of all explain Neel and Riya about that as well. As far as an NRE account is concerned, you need to keep in mind that it can be opened only with the deposit of some foreign currency, either by way of a remittance from abroad or by way of, when they are on a visit into India, they can go to the bank and deposit some foreign currency, say $100 in cash as well, or in traveler's check. So that means that an NRE account, the credit for purposes of opening or even fresh deposits has to be by and large in foreign currency. The account itself is maintained in Indian rupees, just like NRO.
Okay.
So both NRO and NRE, they are essentially accounts in Indian rupees.
Okay.
But the difference is the manner in which you open, and even a bigger difference is that out of your NRE account, you can freely repatriate whatever balance is there in rupees into any foreign currency of your choice.
Okay.
And there is no restriction or limitation on the amount of repatriation.
Okay.
The other aspect in regard to the NRO account, which you have to keep in mind, is that there are facilities for repatriation, but they are subject to certain regulations. There is a third account, Chami, and that is what we refer to as FCNR. Now, what is an FCNR account? An FCNR is a foreign currency non-resident account. Now, a foreign currency non-resident account, as the name itself suggests, is required to be maintained in any foreign currency. And you have to keep in mind that while an NRE NRO account can be either a savings account or even a fixed deposit, an FCNR account is necessarily required to be maintained in any recognized foreign currency itself. It can be the US dollar, sterling pound, the euro, Japanese yen, etc. There are a number of foreign currencies in which you can have your FCNR deposits. Now, coming to deposit and the rates of interest on these various accounts, keep in mind that as far as NRO account is concerned, the NRO account is carrying almost the same rates of interest just like an ordinary savings account. Even in case of an NRE account, the rates of interest are more or less similar as in the case of the NRO account, except for the fact that your NRO account deposit, Charmi, just as you keep a resident deposit, it can start from a period of 90 days, 3 months, 6 months, 9, 12 months, and longer periods. As far as an NRE deposit is concerned or an FCNR deposit is concerned, you have to keep in mind that the deposit period is minimum 1 year. That means you cannot have a deposit for less than 1 year, and if you keep a deposit for more than 1 year or more, but then you want to prematurely withdraw or break that deposit, please keep in mind you will lose interest because you will not get any interest whatsoever. So NRIs need to be well advised, particularly when they are going in for NRE or FCNR deposits, that they take a right decision of keeping the deposit only if they are sure that they will hold it for a year or so. Otherwise, alternatively, it is much better, particularly in regard to the NRE, to hold it in a savings account, because there at least you will get an interest. Currently the interest on savings account ranges around 3%. As far as fixed deposits are concerned, depending on the tenure, and these deposits can go, particularly NRE or FCNR, starting from 1 year even up to a period of 10 years. But the interest rate is in the range of, as per the current norms, say around 5% or more. So you have to understand this. Now, Chami, people often ask, should I go for NRE or should I go for FCNR deposit? Now, this is an important question. If your objective is to keep the money invested in India, and in fact you want to make rupee investments out of that account, and redeposit it in the form of rupees, obviously the NRE account, or where it is practical, the NRO account may be the right choice for you. But if your idea is that you just want to keep the money in India with the objective that you may like to take it back anytime, and you want to protect your foreign currency against any exchange rate fluctuations, in such a case the FCNR deposit becomes useful. Because obviously, as far as FCNR deposits are concerned, the interest rates are much lower than the rupee rates. You normally get, say, around 5% in case of a rupee deposit. But as far as FCNR is concerned, depending on the tenure, it may be even less than 1% or anything between 1 to 2%, and that too depending on what currency you have maintained this. So if you understand all these practical aspects, then you can handle your non-resident bank accounts extremely well, Chami.
How can an NRI operate this bank accounts in India while he is abroad?
I think you asked a very important question. In fact, I would like to offer some very smart but practical advice to our NRI friends. First and foremost, keep in mind that there are a different set of regulations for your different accounts. As far as NRE or FCNR deposits are concerned, keep in mind that along with the name of the first holder who is an NRI, if you want to have a joint name, which you can, either in the account or in the deposit, you would need to ensure that the joint holder is also an NRI. That is to say, you cannot have a resident person as a joint holder in a NRE or FCNR account or deposit. That's number one. Well, in such a case, it is very practical for you to have a power of attorney, Charmi, to ensure that the accounts can be operated very smoothly. In the case of an NRO account, you have the added advantage that along with the non-resident, because this is an ordinary rupee account, the non-resident can have any resident person of his choice, say his relative, friend or anybody whom he wishes, as a joint account holder in the NRO account, and that would make it very simple or easy. But two things you have to keep in mind. In case of a power of attorney, you have to execute it very clearly. You can give it to any single individual, or you can give it either or to two persons. Any one of the two can operate. You have to ensure that this power of attorney is duly deposited with the bank after executing it, having it notarized and getting it in the proper form and manner in which the bank wants. That can be extremely useful or easy in terms of operation of your bank accounts. And this power of attorney can be used for all these accounts. You don't need separate powers for separate accounts. But one thing, Chami, we need to advise all friends, whether or not you keep it as joint or with a power of attorney, if you are not having it in the joint capacity, please ensure that at least you have a nominee in each of the accounts. If it is particularly a single name, because just in case the non-resident something happens to him, it would be extremely difficult in absence of a nominee for anybody to really get the benefit of the funds. Even if there is a will, without a nominee, the whole thing can become very complicated. So these are some practical bits of advice.
One more question. Can an NRI transfer his Indian rupee funds in foreign currency abroad? And what are the rules and regulations for this?
Well, Chami, that's a very important question you have asked, because every NRI would definitely want to ensure that while he maintains his funds even in Indian rupees, he gets the benefit of repatriation. And I remember there was a time when, particularly out of your NRO account, even if you had to remit 1 rupee, you needed the permission of the RBI. I'm talking of the good old days when there was real tight exchange control. But since then, the liberalization has made India's economy almost keep pace and sync with the global economy. And though we do not have cent% convertibility on the rupee part, in terms of foreign exchange, particularly for NRIs, they should be happy that there is a lot of liberalization in this regard. Now, let me explain to you specifically the rules for repatriation in regard to all the 3 accounts. Well, FCNR, as obviously you can understand, is one of the easiest because it is a foreign currency that you have maintained in dollars, sterling pounds, euros, etc. And you wish that at the end of the completion of the FD tenure, or even if you want to withdraw it prematurely, you can remit the entire amount overseas in the same currency without any difficulty. It doesn't take any time at all. If you want to make a remittance out of your NRE account, keep in mind that even out of the NRE account, you can freely repatriate into any currency of your choice. You may even have, say, like brought into dollars, but you want to send back in sterlings, that is also permitted. Not only that, there is no monetary ceiling or limit. So like NRE is a completely free flowing rupee fund. Say for example, there are people whom I know, they have some 50 crores as their NRE rupee deposits. If they wish, technically the entire 50 crores NRI can go overnight overseas by way of a foreign repatriation at the prevailing exchange rate. The conversion can take place, and there is no difficulty at all. It's the simplest of the formality. But the real good news is that what was not permitted earlier, today the regulations are really liberal, and as per the current norms, any NRI out of his NRO account during one financial year, in parts or in whole, together, in the aggregate, he can repatriate up to 1 million US dollars equivalent of dollars or any other foreign currency.
Okay.
Now that means we are talking of 10 lakh dollars. If by the current rate we go, it's very close to 7.5 crores of Indian rupees, which is a very good, handsome amount. And in fact, there is one extra piece of good news for NRIs, and which can be kept in mind for all practical purposes. If you want to ensure that you are able to enjoy a larger chunk of repatriability at a time, what you need to do is, because there is this special provision that if you do not wish to remit overseas, you can even alternatively convert from your NRO to NRE account in every financial year up to 1 million US dollars. Because it would have more or less the same impact. And this was brought in with a view to encourage NRIs to keep their Indian rupee funds here. Even if they do not wish to take it overseas, they can transfer it to NRE account, because it would guarantee them that they can take it as and when they want. So particularly in case of NRIs who have large amount of funds here in the NRO channel, they can, every year try to ensure that by this $1 million equivalent of transfer, instead of sending it overseas, they can transfer from their NRO to NRE account. And say you have done this over a couple of years and you need it, Chami, without any difficulty, you would have accumulated around 3, 4, 5 million US dollars, so that equivalent rupees in the NRE account, swish, off it can go whenever you wish.
Well, Mukesh sir, thank you very much. The information you have given about the bank accounts of NRIs will be really very useful. But I do have another question. What about the income tax liabilities on the interest earned from these accounts?
Well, let me say, Chami, this is a subject on its own and will also take some time. Why don't we do this in our next episode, when we shall take time out to explain not only to Neel and Riya but all NRIs who wish to know about taxability of the interest and earnings out of your NRE, NRO and FCNR accounts. So until then, have patience and keep watching.